tell us, so a UK judge rubber stamped the extradition. Now it goes to top level UK official as the final decider. Can you explain the process here?
Yeah, so the Home Office is where extradition requests originate, as in that's where the US government passes them on to. So the UK Home Office receives a US extradition request under the treaty, and then it goes to the judiciary. So we're basically seeing it make a loop back to the Home Office, and the judge has put a stamp on it, as you say, and now Home Office Secretary Priti Patel, who is an important figure, which we can get into, but now she is going to be reviewing the extradition request. There's 4 weeks here that Assange's legal team has to make submissions and put forward their argument for why the extradition should not be approved by her. But she's going to have to look for any improprieties, and if there aren't any, if she can't see any, which is likely, it goes back to the magistrate court that just sent it to her. And then that is when we finally get to see an appeal from the Assange legal team on many issues that they've been waiting to challenge. Most importantly, the fact that they believe that, and this was said by Stella Assange today. I don't know if you have the clip of her outside of court by any chance, but she mentioned that they are going to impress upon the appeals court that the district court did not apply the extradition treaty between the US and UK appropriately because it should not cover political offenses. And espionage is recognized, globally. I'm not just talking about in the UK, but for many contexts, country to country, espionage is seen as a political offense. What's espionage to the Russian government is unlikely to be a crime to the United States. What's espionage to the Chinese government, as you can tell, would not probably be that big of a deal to another country. What's espionage to the US, China or Russia or some other country like Iran may not care about that at all. So that's why that's usually excluded from the extradition treaty. So then an appeal process will kick in after the Home Office is done with this extradition request.
Right. And can you kind of describe, because my understanding, I'm certainly no scholar, is this is clearly political. And what you were just saying is the extradition in the first place is not supposed to be political. But isn't there something also to be said for his removal from the Ecuadorian embassy in the first place? Is that part of what likely could be the Assange team's defense?
The problem with that, though, is the position of the UK and the US is not to recognize political asylum and to say that, in fact, by being in the embassy, he was a fugitive from justice. Their words, not mine. And that he was just there, not because he had a fear for his safety, but because, in fact, he was doing this to dodge going to Sweden to face the sexual allegations, a case that completely collapsed and was filled with improprieties and violations of due process rights when you look at how the Swedish prosecution authority handled it. And that's to the detriment of not only Julian Assange, but also both of the woman accusers.
Right. Absolutely. So tell me about Priti Patel and what is her significance as far as the UK system, if any knowledge of, how she usually views these things. And if she will take into consideration the original ruling by Judge Vanessa Barrister that ruled he shouldn't be extradited.
So let me turn your viewers on to Declassified UK. They're at declassifieduk.org. If you're not familiar with this, it's a small outfit of scrappy investigative journalists who are dedicated and committed to challenging the security state in the UK, showing the way that not only are their security services compromising the integrity of government, but also the influence of the US over their institutions and how they're captured as a result of U.S. influence. And Declassified UK, Matt Kennard is the chief investigator. He published a report on Priti Patel and how she is part of had a position on the advisory council for the Henry Jackson Society, which is a CIA-linked group. Former CIA Director James Woolsey was a part of this Henry Jackson Society. It is a right-wing group. It is engaged in some of the more fierce right-wing attacks on Julian Assange throughout the past decade. And she at some point was a part of this council that is believed between 2013 and 2016. So before she was the Home Secretary, but she has this as part of her past. As currently, she has endorsed an expansion of the Official Secrets Acts in the UK, which is highly significant. This would be the biggest expansion, most major overhaul of the acts since 1989. And what we're talking about is a law that actually makes it a crime to publish classified information that can be used to target journalists and to target whistleblowers. We saw some of this culture when it came to D-notices that were issued to The Guardian when Edward Snowden came forward and provided documents to The Guardian. You may remember one of the more bizarre episodes where people from the government actually came to the offices of The Guardian, went out, I believe, to a parking garage and destroyed a hard drive that no longer had files on it, but took a hammer to it and made it so that they could never use that hard drive again because it was quote unquote tainted by sensitive files, again, that were no longer on the hard drive. So this was just an exercise in intimidation and harassment. And that shows you that what we're dealing with in the UK is a culture against openness and transparency. The Home Office has resisted any efforts by people to submit requests for, and I'm talking about freedom of information requests to find out the role of the Home Office in supporting the campaign to remove Julian Assange from the Ecuador embassy. As Declassified UK has reported and attempted to detail, there was a campaign called Operation Pelican. This is the campaign to remove Julian Assange from the Ecuador embassy. The Home Office was involved through a question to a parliamentarian. It was gleaned that 8 officials from the Home Office were involved in this. This is the office that is now going to review the extradition request. And but yet they claim that they don't have any of these records. That they're not the custodian of these records. So people should go search for them. So they don't have anything in their files, which doesn't make any sense at all. So they're giving journalists the bureaucratic runaround, and at the same time, it's very clear that they are compromised. They are captive, and at this point, when it comes to Priti Patel and the Home Office, the best route for supporters of Assange and civil liberties, human rights, and press freedom organizations who care about this case, if they would like to do anything to stop this from moving forward, I think it should be to ask them to prove that the Home Office can act independently from the U.S. government, because I think it's highly doubtful whether they're willing to chart a course that departs from what are in the interests of the U.S. government.
Right. And let me play the clip that you had referenced of Stella Morris, who is now the wife of Julian Assange, her response after this decision today.
Today was a formality, but I still felt sick to my stomach about what happened today. A magistrate signing an order to send Julian to the United States. The UK has no obligation to extradite Julian Assange to the United States. In fact, it is required by its international obligations to stop this extradition. Boris Johnson and Priti Patel, don't extradite Julian to the country that conspired to murder him. Boris Johnson and Priti Patel can stop this at any time. They can stop it today. They can stop this nightmare today and return Julian to his family. They can do the right thing and enforce Article 4 of the US-UK Extradition Treaty, which prohibits extraditions for political offenses. Right now, they're in breach of their own treaty. This is a political case, and with the signature of the magistrate, this now passes squarely into the political domain. Free Julian Assange.
What was your takeaways from what she was saying?
Yeah, she makes a really good point because it is about the politics. Right now, what we need to do is not just focus on what he's accused of doing, and not just what's at the core of the case brought against him, but we need to think about what are those things that can shame the government into doing what needs to be done in order to prevent Julian from being sent to the United States. And she's hitting on two very key aspects, or a few very key aspects. And so I thought it was good the way that she presented that.
And technically, I know that this Patel, it's more procedural that she'll be looking at, but could she weigh at all the fact that there's been reports from like Yahoo that the United States tried or talked about kidnapping and assassinating him under the Trump administration? Or is that like it's been disregarded in these other lower courts? Would that not be weighed in her decision?
So there may be some changes to the law that she can claim hamstring her and prevent her from making those political considerations. But we've seen two examples in British history where the U.S. wanted, they were both accused of hacking. Lori Love and Gary McKinnon are both well-known cases in which those individuals were viewed as having mental health problems, physical ailments, etc. And they were able to make cases that were persuasive to the courts. Actually, and this is where it's relevant to Priti Patel, Theresa May, who went on to become prime minister at one point, was the secretary that reviewed the extradition request related to Gary McKinnon. And that was rejected. And that was rejected for reasons that could be similar to this case, considering the politics, considering what would happen to the person if they were allowed to be sent to the United States. So absolutely, there is nothing that says that the Home Office has to allow the U.S. to receive Julian Assange and bring him to trial. So they can hide behind the law. They can hide behind different guidelines that they're expected to follow, but it's also within their power to throw this out if they would like to do it.
Now, assuming the worst happens, is there any chance in hell that a trial in the United States would be fair, or that Julian Assange, based on actual readings of the First Amendment and the Espionage Act, could be found not guilty in the United States? Obviously, you can't predict completely, but the word rubber stamp is used. But is there a chance that he could get a fair trial here?
I don't think so. I think that it's pretty clear when you look at the body of case law related to whistleblowers who were prosecuted under President Barack Obama and under President Donald Trump, that the Justice Department has a massive sledgehammer that they can wield, which would not spare Julian Assange if he was put on trial in the Eastern District of Virginia. They have a lot of ability to bring this forward and do it without regard for how the Espionage Act may be vague, overbroad, may not actually be targeting criminal activity. They're able to take what we would think would be protected under the First Amendment and make it seem like a crime. And what has been an issue for people accused of leaking will be the same problem for Julian Assange, in that he'll be limited in how he can defend himself and argue that those documents were published and were in the public interest. And he'll be simply expected to understand and recognize that those documents could do damage to the United States, that there's possible that people who were named in them could be endangered. They're not charging him for the entire sets of files, just to be clear. I don't know how many people are aware of that, but what the Justice Department does is they go through and they pick specific documents, and they find ones in which there were alleged informants or alleged confidential sources, and they say that, well, you didn't protect those people, and so that makes you guilty of committing this crime of violating the Espionage Act. And so there are many ways in which they can make it impossible for Julian Assange to keep the focus on the right to publish, and then they can turn it into an issue of judgment, of the fact that he was reckless in publishing these documents, and make it about what's in the interests of the US government versus what's in the interests of the people, which is transparency.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.